Welcome, fam. So today we're going to talk about the Truman Show and its relationship with the Matrix, Neo from the Matrix. And I know, and it's something that it becomes very similar once you get down to it. Both of them follow almost the same structures and ideas. And it's because both of them are actually working towards the idea, towards one certain core, right? For a lot of people, they think, well, they're looking for the freedom, right? But the very idea that they're looking for is just truth in itself, and what and how that is you're able to reach that truth as a person or be illuminated by it in context for the rest of the world. Let's say that there's a truth out there, right? That truth is something that you understand that is out there, but nobody else can sort of see it. And nobody even tries to. Everybody feels almost like a copy, right? In the Truman world, everybody's an actor playing a part, but they don't understand the truth that the Truman is seeking, right? Those little moments of concepts. They understand that everything is a show, but the way that Truman is seeing this, he's looking at something deeper within it. The same thing happens with Neo. With Neo, you have something where it's like he's almost being awakened to the truth, but he also follows the path, right? Like Morpheus tells him that he can only show him the path. He has to walk through it. He has to become it's almost like something internal within them that all of them have to feel it. They have to be illuminated or this sense of self-realization to the truth. And they have to become that truth. In this watch that I was going through the Truman Show, I noticed one thing that I didn't see in the beginning is that at the very beginning, the movie understands this philosophy. It's not a movie that's just trying to tell you, how to be illuminated and want to find the truth. But it's a movie that's trying to tell you so much about that existential question. Truman standing in front of the mirror, right? Something almost like you're looking at something personal, right? You're looking at this human being in this moment of solitude to truly understand who he is. It's almost like you're digging at the mind of the human being. In this case, being Truman or Jim Carrey. And Jim Carrey has this personality to himself that's extremely human. And because he's a comedian too, you're almost digging at the essence of truth. I think saying that he's a comedian and also like really adds a different element to it, almost something more meta, like fourth wall breaking. Because comedians usually always are telling the truth, or they seek a certain truth within humanity to bring comedy into it. And I think the fact that Jim Carrey is just like that, it's so perfect. Like you couldn't have picked a better perfect person to make this movie. So as Truman is looking at his mirror, right? He's singing the song, and one of the lyrics says, "If I die before I reach the summit, you use me as alternative food." And then you start getting the vibes, right? And from then on, I was just like, okay, so this film, even though I always thought that it was talking about these subjects, it really, really understand what it's talking about. Because it speaks about the same thing that Neo speaks about, right? Because for Neo, once he's able to become the truth, right, more people will follow along towards the truth. When people realize that he is the truth, right, almost in a Christian sense, that he is Jesus, people will follow him. Because for Neo, once he becomes Neo, you start realizing that people become almost cultish in essence, that he is the truth and they follow him. In a real world, we had the idea of Christ takes the same form. Once people found out that he was the truth, from the small amount of people that were just joining him and believing that he is the Son of God, it eventually became the biggest religion in the world because they all believe that it is the truth. And for Truman, even though there's no followers to him, the idea of truth is something that even when he does ultimately at the end of the film escape into the outside world, he's carrying with himself the idea of truth. So the human being cannot look at it as a lie anymore. So he's able to spread all of that and become something grander than himself. Truman, and it's crazy because the film goes, if I die before I reach the summit, you use me as alternative food. Meaning that when I am that food, I am that beacon of light, you're going to be able to walk the path and become the chosen one like Neo. It's very heavy stuff that it understands from the very beginning. For Neo, right, you have a lot of things that he gets walked through because he's walking with Morpheus, right? So he's being introduced to the truth. It's just that once he's presented with the truth, he has to accept it. He has to truly accept it within his core that he is the chosen one and this is the Matrix. Because you got to understand that even if you understand that something, right, let's say the truth of the universe, and you kind of know that there's something weird out there, you still don't believe it because you're so bound to this reality. And this is alluded like twice by different people. By the creator in the Truman Show, he also makes that allusion as well that people are so bound to their reality that even if you do give them something that's unreal, they're just not gonna believe it because they're so bound to it. Same thing happens with Neo, and Neo has to walk through a process before he truly believes in it. When Neo is jumping between two buildings, you're already in the Matrix. You're already surrounded by an eternity of items or infinite of ideas that are just miracles, right? That's something that you shouldn't be believing. That's outside your reality. And you've been introduced to all these characters that can do stuff that's completely out of your reality, but you still don't believe it enough. That belief, you have to really, it's something that subconsciously for the human being has to be completely flipped on its head. It has to be something that the human being has to believe to a score before he's able to do it. That's why I've been jumping between two buildings with somebody that nobody has done it first, right? So when you see Neo, he's about to jump in the first Matrix from one building to the next. He kind of fails. He fails, right? Because he doesn't believe it still. Even though he's being presented with a reality that's crazy, you still don't believe it because that's how the human being is. When you have something that is just so cathartic as the real truth, you're just not going to believe it no matter what you do. And the average person won't believe it. That's why you need somebody like the chosen one that walks you along the path and shows you like, hey, I do believe that I could jump between buildings and I able to attain it. Truman is that. For Truman, it's something like he sees the light at the end. So in this film, it's just like he's walking through it with the same sense of realization. He's just going by little. He's not being introduced like Neo. Instead, this is a process of illumination by himself. Something that you have to look within his own mind and how he's thinking. And the more he progresses through it. Like, one of the things is that he sees almost in the distance, the truth. He talks about the Fiji Islands, right? It's the islands that he wants to travel because it's somewhere out in the distance. But the way he speaks about it is not just something that's out in the distance. It's something that has a lot more depth to it. Because he doesn't just tell you that the Fiji Islands are just islands in the distance. He tells you that they're in the completely opposite side of where he is. He truly is in a different state of existence, right? In his mind, he understands that wherever he has in this reality, he understands there's almost like a flip to it, an opposite version that is the actual truth, and it ventures out into the unknown. For Truman, he understands that he wants to dig into the unknown because that's where the truth lies. The moon represents itself too, like he's always talking about the moon or traveling to it and being an astronaut, or talking about astronaut or flying to the heavens, is because he wants to reach to the farthest point of truth where there is the unknown. It's something that is between. He wants to be greater, and cross it. Like for him, for Truman, you have a lot of concepts that also block that truth, right? The same as Neo, it is not reality. For Truman, it's a lot of the psychological effects that are binding him and binding the reality. Because if he could, if he could overcome reality, he will be able to reach it. The fact that he can traverse through water because of his psychological problems that he has had as a child. So that makes something like realistically boundary that he's incapable of crossing to reaching the absolute and reaching truth and the unknown. For both of the characters too, you always have almost a catalyst or an idea that carries them along until they become self-realized, and it's the idea of love, right? You see like in most movies you always have a love interest and things, but in these films what they do is almost like they introduce the idea. For Truman, it's the idea of Sylvia, something that remains within him, right? Something that he understands that was the truth, because Sylvia, the girl that he meets at the library, eventually tells him that it's all a lie, and he develops such strong emotional love for her that it just becomes so entangled within each other. Truth becomes love, right? Both of them. And so they start marching towards it together. And for Neo, you had Trinity that believes in him. Trinity truly believes and loves her, and loves Neo. So that in itself, both of them are like being carried along by these ideas that are impacting them differently, right? But almost very similarly in the same concept of how they're progressing through this thought process, let's say. Realizing this aspects of the world is something that both of the characters also to experience, right? Right at the beginning, Truman in himself, like he notices a light falling from the heavens, right? And it crashes into the ground. So he starts questioning himself. He starts questioning reality, something completely out of nowhere, right? But it's almost like it's almost like a crack in the process of reality, where even if everything is control, you kind of feel that no, it's not completely in control. And when you feel that something loses its divinity of control, then you can feel you can start going deeper into that reality, right? For Truman, once he started realizing that this world was fake, it just kept growing and growing like a crack in a mirror, right? Like in a windshield, something that develops and grows. So then he started messing with the world. At one point, Truman, right? He's in the middle of traffic and he uses his hands to stop traffic because he's able to stop reality right now, right? With just his hands. And I remember that's almost very similar to Neo, although Neo by this point, he's grown differently, but and more advanced, right? And he has already understood the truth of the Matrix, but I think he's reaching into a deeper truth by then. And it's the Matrix and the Matrix Revolution where the machines are coming for Neo, and he realizes that he can use his powers in the actual real world, not even the make believe Matrix world, and he uses them to stop the machines, which is almost the same thing as in the first film, where he's able to stop bullets and he just raises his hands and he's like no, because they're able to mess with reality, because at that point they are understanding that reality is that not there. I think they still haven't crossed into be full into the truth, because that happens at the end of their stories, or depending on the character. But once you start understanding that reality is fake, you can just mess with it. You can walk through traffic, you can mess with characters, you can do whatever you want because it's not real, it's not there. And that's something like that's amazing to the truth, because when you understand that truth, just think about it like this. Truth exists only in itself, right? That it is factual, that is truth out there. Anything outside of truth by definition is not real. Nothing that is not truth is not real. So you should not even respect it in that regard, right? You should not be part of it because you understand that, well, in for a reality, I understand this is reality, that I go to work, I have a family, I have a home. But once you realize, well, if it's so fake and this is not truth, what's connecting you behind is just these processes and psychologies that are not really there. So once you let go of those ideas, like Truman, you just you dig deeper into, you get closer and closer to the truth. But in that search for truth too, you have something where it's like the system fights against itself, because the system is only predicated on the idea that the human beings have to remain within that system, or the soul, or whatever persona we're talking about, right? You have to remain within the outside, within the falseness, to not reach the truth. And what you do end up having is that a lot of the system, or a lot of the people at play, they are against you within that truth. Your friends or family. For Neo, you have agents that could have been anybody, or human beings themselves. They might have been programs. It might have been programs trying to keep you within the truth. They want to fight against it because their very own survival. They can't reach the truth, right? They're so scared of it. They might not even have the conscious understanding within their power to fully grasp the truth. And because they don't have that consciousness within them, they rather just remain within the fake, false world. People are scared of the actual truth, so they'd rather remain within the Matrix, which a lot of people eventually did. They were given an option to be released from the Matrix or stay in it, and a lot of people just chose to stay in it because it's just more comforting than accepting something that's completely going to destroy your mind, your sense of self, your sense of identity. Walking towards that unknown door that Truman did at the end of the movie, that is rectangle of unknown on the infinite, almost like in Space Odyssey, that rectangle, just that doorway to infinity in the unknown. He has to walk through it, and that's something that people don't do, and they fight against it. There's this moment with his wife, the Truman, and Truman is trying to have a real conversation with her at home, but the wife is just trying, the wife is running a set of programs, right, or a script that she has to tell, which is like she has to advertise this cocoa milk. And Truman, it's almost like just baffled, right? Because it's like, what are you even talking about? How are you making sense? Because by now, Truman's consciousness is already been just elevated to a different state where he understands the truth and he's trying to communicate to other human beings. But the other human beings, they're still on that pattern and they're not going to change from it. So obviously he becomes, enraged, and he has all this frustration, and there's this moment within that scene. But most human beings take up that position where you will talk to them about the truth, and they just don't care, dude. There's nothing you could do about it. They will run the script. They will go watch something like if you tell them the truth about society, the world, or something, you know what ends up happening? They would just start talking to you. Well, did you catch that new episode of Stranger Things and how great it was? Hey, don't get me wrong, I love Stranger Things and all of that, but the point being that they don't care. They would rather be secluded in their real worlds without thinking about deeper into concepts and ideas, because they can't handle it, so they want to be something comfortable. And for Truman, this is something that he started seeing among people and feeling it, because a lot of this is just a feel that you have, something almost like a spiritual awakening to the truth. For Neo too, he's like, follow the white rabbit, or you can take the red pill or the blue pill. Ultimately, these films, even though they're about the search of truth, you can also see something as claiming yourself finally from the world or from reality, like truthfully taking into account action. Because while you're living in something like the Matrix or the Truman Show, which is being televised to the public, you're not in control of yourself. Your idea of choice is not there. And in the Matrix, choice plays a big role in its philosophical discussion in the later films. For Truman, choice is something that it's almost innately to the character, that he's taking this choice to go over all these fears into a different world. And once Truman reaches, let's say, the doorway at the end of the film, he tells, he reclaims himself as a human being, that he's not part of this world. He's not part of anybody that owns him. If I don't see you, well, he does his catchphrase, right? Which is like, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. He says as a farewell to the audience, and he's also reclaiming who he is as a human being. Neo has this big speech, right? He picks up the phone and he tells the machines, it's like, I know what you've done. That he tells them a speech about freedom. I know who you are, and that he's gonna release more people. And both of them are the same essence, that they have just reclaimed their soul as human beings, as they have stepped into the truth. Because when you're not in the truth, you're in a lie, and that's as simple as I can put it. I think we'll leave it like that, gentlemen. Hope you guys understood, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys understood the ideas that I'll try to convey. GG's fam.